Chapter 3662. When Yuan thought about it, and a bitter expression appeared on her face. She didn't know if she was wrong, whether it would have been better not to go to America, whether it would have been better to give up. Yimubai went over and sat by the bedside. Perhaps it was because of the nature of a father and son that Xiangnan was especially close to him. Yimubai sat and Xiangnan leaned against his leg. Initially, he refused to eat anything for the whole day, but now that Yimubai fed him, he ate obediently. Wen Yuan felt a little complicated watching this. Yimubai coaxed Xiangnan to eat and read a children's book to the little boy. After all, he was a sick and weak child, so Xiangnan fell asleep after a while. Yimubai tucked Xiangnan in and then looked at Wen Yuan. His tone was a little faint. "You're not eating? I'm not hungry." Wen Yuan looked down. "Thank you." Yimubai stood up and walked towards her. She was at the junction between the ward and the washroom. He walked over step by step and forced her against the door. His voice was low and hoarse as he said, "Wen Yuan, what kind of tricks are you playing now? If you think that a married woman will fall for this trick, then you're too childish." Her body was pressed against him, and she couldn't move at all. She closed her eyes against the door. "I didn't. So what if you didn't?" He stared at her face. At such a close distance, he could see that her skin was very fine, so fine that there were almost no pores. There was only a circle of fine hair, and he could also see that she lived a comfortable life. Yimubai stretched out a hand and touched her face gently. It was a little too much, and she was very afraid. Her lips were trembling, and her eyes were closed as fingertips touched her lips, and his voice was hoarse. "You look like you're intoxicated now, right?" As he said that, his face was almost touching hers, and his voice was even hoarser, trembling, inexplicably sexy. "Or is it because my brother doesn't touch you, so you want to use other men to satisfy you? Stop talking." Wen Yuan opened his eyes and gritted his teeth. "I'm your sister-in-law. A man belongs to where his heart is." Yimubai smiled mockingly and slowly straightened his body. "You just don't want to admit it." Wen Yuan was still leaning against the door. She suddenly closed her eyes and laughed softly. She laughed so hard that her chest heaved up and down. It was really quite seductive. "Even if Yuchio wasn't satisfied, I would look for anyone but you, Yimubai." Wen Yuan opened his eyes and looked at him. "So, don't look at me as if I'll pounce on you at any time." Yimubai's expression turned even uglier. "That better be the case." Wen Yuan's eyes were a little hot. She quickly lowered her eyes and did not look at him. Her heart was a little cold. She felt that she might have been wrong. She shouldn't have gone to America. She wanted to give up on him now. She thought. She thought. She thought. She thought. She thought. However, she didn't dare to disclose the news of her divorce. Otherwise, though in family, including her parents, would not let her go. And Xiangnan's identity, she clenched her fists. It seemed that she had no way out. Maybe she was just like what Yimubai thought. She was a scheming woman. He did not know why. He had forgotten everything. He could be friendly to everyone, including Bai Shuili and Bai Shuili's child, but he could not be friendly to Wen Yuan. He subconsciously rejected this woman, and even he could not explain it. He didn't know why. He forgot everything. He could be friendly to everyone, including Bai Shuili and Bai Shuili's child, but he just couldn't be friendly to Wen Yuan. He subconsciously rejected this woman. He couldn't say it himself. He took the lead to enter the small dining room. Wen Yuan frowned. "Yimubai, you don't feel comfortable if you don't insult others?" "I feel uncomfortable when I look at you." He said it straightforwardly. Then he frowned again. "You acted really well the night I stayed in the villa." Wen Yuan immediately thought of what happened that night. She bit her lips. "I don't understand what you mean." "You don't understand?" Yimubai sneered again. "My brother has a woman outside. How can he be so intimate with you? I heard that he lives outside, right?" "Enough." Wen Yuan said awkwardly, "You don't have to worry about my business. I won't seduce you. Don't worry." Then she started to eat. Actually, Wen Yuan was quite good-looking, and she was the kind of woman that was suitable for IKEA. She was dignified and gentle, definitely not the flirtatious and cheap type. Only Yimubai would think that way when he saw her. They ate the meal in silence. He didn't speak. She didn't speak either. She cleaned up the dishes and walked to the balcony. She knew that Yi Mubai was behind her. She said, "There's someone in my heart. I've liked him for a long time, but he doesn't like me." So, she turned her head and looked at Yi Mubai quietly. "What you said doesn't exist. I just mistook you for someone else at the concert that day. Please don't misunderstand. We can't get along if this goes on." Yi Mubai laughed dryly and stood there casually. "If that's the case, I should be relieved. You won't try to climb into my bed when you go to America, right?" Wen Yuan looked down and said softly, "Yes. Even if I divorce your brother, I won't climb into your bed. Don't worry. You want to find a foreign devil? Do you think they can satisfy you?" Yi Mubai frowned and asked softly. Wen Yuan was furious. She turned around and walked away. When she passed by him, he grabbed her wrist and swung her over. She fell right into his arms. Warm, firm, familiar. At that moment, Wen Yuan wanted to cry. She thought he was dead when he disappeared. She cried for so long when she was pregnant with his child. He didn't know that he had forgotten everything when he came back. He was so mean to her, and she cried too. Now that she was in his arms, she wanted to cry too. She was reluctant, but she forced herself to leave his arms. Her hand was on his shoulder, but it slid down to his heart. The more she pushed against him, the tighter he held her. Yi Mubai's voice was tense. "Look at you. You said you don't want to seduce me. Huh? This book is from..." Chapter 3663. Wen Yuan was extremely embarrassed. She turned her face to the side. "Let go of me. Xiangnan is here. Thinking that Wenin isn't here, you can mess around with other men? Is that what you mean?" He moved closer to her ear and asked in a low and husky voice. What kind of logic was that? Wen Yuan struggled with all her might. It would have been better if she hadn't struggled, but once she did, Yi Mubai couldn't take it anymore. He whispered in her ear, "Wen Yuan, don't move anymore," because he was having a reaction. Wen Yuan froze for a moment. She bit her lip, feeling a little embarrassed. After a long time, she whispered, "Let go of me." Yi Mubai suddenly said, "I was wrong." His hot body hugged her tightly, and his thin lips pressed against her ear. "It turns out that I also have a desire for a married woman." He lowered his head, but didn't do anything. He just stuck close to her. Wen Yuan said softly, "Yi Mubai, we've crossed the line." Yi Mubai's hand was on her stomach. He tightened his grip. "Wen Yuan, do you still have any morals? Shouldn't a woman with morals push me away?" As he said that, he chuckled in a low voice. Then, his hand went under her sweater. Wen Yuan groaned. "Yi Mubai, what are you doing? Take your hand away. Don't touch that." But he persisted. He hugged her and stared at her. "Don't want it? But I think you really want it." He retracted his finger and smiled wickedly. Then, he went to the bathroom to wash up. Wen Yuan's legs went limp. She almost couldn't stand. Her breath was hot, tainted with Yi Mubai's scent. She felt a little ashamed. It was actually very humiliating for him to treat her like that. But she still had a reaction. He must have looked down on her. Wen Yuan's hand clutched her shirt. She curled up on the balcony and looked at the night sky outside. The night breeze blew, but her eyes were hot. She felt like crying. She had liked the man for so long. She had waited for so long, but he hated her. Wen Yuan stood alone in the night, feeling lonely. Yi Mubai came out of the washroom and looked at her. "Are you angry?" "I'm not angry." Wen Yuan turned his head. His long hair draped over his shoulders, and half of his face was hidden in his jet black hair. It was fair and beautiful. She looked at Yi Mubai and said softly, "Yi Mubai, just now you said you were wrong." "Actually, I was wrong." A faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "I'll take care of Xiangnan myself. You can go back. Don't worry, I won't appear in front of you in the future, nor will I seduce you." Yi Mubai frowned. "What do you mean?" Wen Yuan raised his head and smiled. "That's exactly what I meant. I won't trouble you anymore, so please don't treat me like that." She was wrong. From the beginning, she shouldn't have had any illusions about him. After Wen Yuan said that, Yi Mubai smiled and placed his hand in his pocket. "Not bad. You're very self-aware. That's all. It's best that you don't trouble me anymore." With that said, he looked as though he was going to take out a cigarette. But after that, he walked out to smoke. Yi Mubai stood in the corridor. His long fingers pinched the cigarette, but gently as he raised his head and squinted his eyes. Actually, what they said wasn't right. It wasn't normal for him to have feelings for her. In the past, when it came to his girlfriends or other women, there had been female celebrities who had sent them to his bed, but he had never touched them. Book from Chapter 3664. But when Yuan was different, he wanted to bully her. Was there something wrong with him? Did he like other people's wives? Or was it because she was his sister-in-law that she brought him a forbidden excitement? Or was when Yuan himself very attractive? He couldn't tell. He only knew that his mind was filled with the image of her curling up in his arms like a shrimp, crying no, no. He felt like he was going to explode. He put out the cigarette. Maybe he should find a woman. Then he wouldn't have to fantasize about an annoying woman all day long. He stood outside for a long time. Late at night, he pushed the door open and went in. In the dim ward, Xiangnan fell asleep. She was lying sideways in Wen Yuan's arms. It was a very warm scene. It also gave Yi Mubai a very beautiful feeling. It was like something that was missing was put together again. He looked at it quietly for a long time. Later, he lay on the sofa and still looked at it like this, unwilling to leave. He must be sick and possessed. Asterisk on the other side of the city, in a high-class apartment. Yi Mulin, who had been busy for the whole day, helped by Ainan's little friend take a bath. He wrapped her in a white bath towel and placed her on her little bed. As a father, he helped her wipe her and said seriously, "Ainan, do you know that you were wrong?" By Ainan looked at her papa, her expression indescribable. Wasn't she safe today? Why did Papa mention this to her now? By Ainan silently swallowed her saliva. "I was wrong, Mama. I was wrong." There were complicated emotions in Yi Mulin's eyes. He didn't know whether he should be happy or unhappy. It was obvious that Ainan was avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial. He didn't know who she got her cleverness from. He wasn't that naughty, and Bai Shuili probably wasn't that smart when she was young. Thinking of this, Yi Mulin's heart was filled with pride. He couldn't explain this feeling, but his identity as a strict father made him decide to hit her little p asterisk NIS. He put his hand over and coughed lightly. "Why didn't you say that it was Mama's call?" Ainan lay on her stomach with her little face buried in the pillow. She half turned her face and said with a strong desire to live, "Because I miss Daddy." These few words seemed to be magical. The man who was about to teach Bai Ainan a lesson suddenly felt reluctant. He lowered his head and kissed the little fellow. "Okay, Daddy won't hit you anymore," and got up, hugged his neck, and said affectionately, "Daddy is the best." He was speechless. He didn't know if it was a good thing for him to spoil her like this. He didn't seem to have any principles. Yi Mulin thought for a while and decided to let his daughter make the decision. "Dad always has to fight one. And do you think you should fight Mom or Ann?" Yi Mulin's fingers rested on her little shoulder, and then he couldn't help but touch her back. Her little body was extremely cute, and he couldn't bear to let go. He flipped her over and over like a little doll, kissing her again and again, and then allowed him to kiss her, and finally said with some disgust, "Dad, you're so perverted." "Pervert? Did I?" He thought that he was only perverted towards Bai Shuili. Yi Mulin smiled and kissed the little girl, coaxing her to sleep as soon as possible. Before Ainan fell asleep, she looked at him eagerly. "Dad, do you really want to hit Mom's p asterisk NIS?" Yi Mulin chuckled and reached out to touch her little head. "Then, Dad, can I punish you in another way?" Bai Shuili, who was in the study, shivered all over. This book came from Chapter 3665. I just want to make you cry after coaxing the little girl. Yi Mulin rubbed his waist and walked into the master bedroom. There was no one inside. It was empty. He frowned and looked at the time. It was already past 10 o'clock. What was Bai Shuili busy with? He went to the study and saw her lying there, translating. "Don't look so close, or you'll be short-sighted." He walked over and pulled her hair. Bai Shuili looked up at him, then lowered her head and muttered, "I'm past the age of short-sightedness, okay? That's old." Yi Mulin's face darkened, and he held her chin. "Get up. You're so annoying." Bai Shuili was working. She thought he was annoying, so she subconsciously hid his hand. Yi Mulin glared at her, but Bai Shuili didn't know anything. He stared at her for a long time. In the end, Yi Mulin went out and took a shower in the master bedroom. Then he leaned against the bed and flipped through a magazine. He was waiting for her. He was a little impatient. It was almost 12 o'clock, and she was still working, so he got up and walked to the study. Bai Shuili was still working as before. He looked at the door for a while, then returned to the master bedroom. This time, he took out his documents to read. After a long time, it was almost 1 o'clock. He really couldn't wait any longer, so he went straight to the study and opened the door. Bai Shuili was shocked. She turned around and looked at him. "You're not asleep yet?" He stared at her, then reached out and picked her up. He closed her computer and said, "Go to sleep." "No, Yi Mulin, if you want to sleep, you can sleep by yourself." She was speechless. She hit his shoulder and said, "Go to sleep. Don't worry about me." He stared at her and said slowly, "I can't sleep alone." Bai Shuili was speechless, but she was afraid of falling. She could only put her arms around his shoulders and let him carry her back to the master bedroom. He pressed her against the soft bed, kissed her for a while, and touched the corner of her mouth. "Do you want to take a shower, or do you want to do it first?" She came back to herself from the kiss. She blushed and turned away. Yi Mulin, she remembered that he wouldn't let her. She could only bite her lips weakly. "We can take care of it together, but I don't want to have a relationship with you." "But I want to." He leaned close to her ear and bit it gently. "We're living together and sleeping together. Do you think we'll have sex?" "Bai Shuili, did you go to America and your brain is filled with Westerners?" She bit his neck angrily. "You're too hateful. If you dare to do anything, I won't let you off." He chuckled. "Why won't you let me go?" As he spoke, he said a few vulgar words in a low voice. Her ears turned red. Yi Mulin chuckled again. "Bai Shuili, I won't let you go before you let me go." As he spoke, he began to grope her. Bai Shuili had no choice. She turned her face to the side and said in a sobbing voice, "Yi Mulin, let me go." I don't want to. I want to." He kissed her, and his eyes were deep and locked on her. It was as if there was magic that made her unable to say no more. As he kissed her, he murmured, and then said that "I can't hit your butt anymore." I thought about it for a long time, but I couldn't think of a better punishment, so he smiled and kissed her. "Does it hurt?" I'll update it tomorrow. End of this chapter. Chapter 3666. Her black hair was scattered on the white sheets. Her face was buried in the pillow. Her hands were clenched into fists in her mouth, and her shoulders were trembling slightly. She looked pitiful no matter how you looked at it. Yi Mulin pulled her hand away and kissed her. His voice was low and hoarse. "I really don't want you to cry like this to seduce me. Don't say it." Her face was full of tears, and she bit her lips. "Yi Mulin, you bastard." "Yes, I'm a bastard. I didn't abandon you. What's wrong with me being a bastard? Am I a bastard for doing this to you? Who will compensate me for all these years, huh?" The more he said, the more he wanted to kill her. Bai Shuili cried a lot. Yi Mulin let out a sigh of relief and coaxed her in her ear. "And I heard you crying like this." She asked her mother what happened. "What did you say? Did you tell her that you were beaten by your father?" As he spoke, his voice was full of Yuwang, which made him look very bad. Bai Shuili couldn't stand him like this. She burst into tears. "Yi Mulin, you're so bad. Didn't you know on the first day you married me, huh?" He smiled warmly against her, and then he stopped teasing her. He only cared about plundering and possessing her. He didn't let her go until midnight. Bai Shuili felt that her waist was about to break. She buried her face in the pillow and couldn't stop crying. Yi Mulin leaned against her and stroked her shoulder with some satisfaction. After a while, he leaned over and kissed her face. "Are you uncomfortable? Why are you crying like this?" Her face was buried in the pillow, and her voice was vague. "It's none of your business." These were the words of wealth. He followed her and kissed her again, making her gasp for breath. She turned her head and glared at him. "Yi Mulin, what else do you want? We've already done it. If you want more, I don't have the strength to accompany you anymore." Yi Mulin smiled in a deep voice. "I'll take you to take a bath. Don't you hate not being clean?" She lay on her stomach and didn't move. He reached out and picked her up easily. As he hugged her, he realized that she was thinner than before. His eyes darkened. She had suffered a little. Bai Shuili really had no strength, so she let him do it. She gently closed her eyes and felt that she was placed in the warm water. It was very comfortable. She softly snorted and lay on the edge of the bathtub. Yulin leaned over and rubbed her back, gently wiping her body. The warm water and his perfect service made by Shiuli want to sleep. She lay on her stomach and lowered her guard. Yulin's voice suddenly rang in her ears. "Have you thought about me all these years?" She groaned vaguely and did not open her eyes. He continued to speak in a hoarse voice. "Do you miss me hugging you?" This time she woke up and rolled over to look at him. Perhaps because it was nighttime, or perhaps because her mind was empty after doing it, she was not as guarded as she was during the day. She just hugged his neck. "What about you?" He lowered his head and kissed her. After a long while, he said in a hoarse voice, "What do you think?" Bai Shiuli secretly clenched her fists. "Don't do it again. I'm tired. Carry me to rest." His dark eyes stared at her. After a long time, he still carried her back to the master bedroom. She lay there sleeping, and he took a dry towel to dry her wet hair bit by bit. After he was done, he looked at her sleeping face and thought silently that she was actually still avoiding it. Perhaps she was still angry. Of course he was angry, but it seemed that he couldn't get angry with her. This book came from Chapter 3667. In the past, he couldn't sleep when she wasn't around. Now that she was around, he still couldn't fall asleep. Then, the man who was almost 40 years old felt a little wronged. He pressed his face against her shoulder and bit down hard. Once was not enough. However, he also knew that he had done it for 2 hours at a time. If he did it again, she might really be injured. He flipped her flat and let out a long breath. He was ready to go to the gym to exercise. However, after he went out, he went to Anne's room to take a look. In the pink and blue room, the child was sleeping soundly. Her posture was the same as her mother's. She was lying on her stomach with her little face buried in the pillow. Yulin's heart softened. The last bit of hope in his heart was shattered by familial love and disappeared completely. He lowered his head and kissed the little fellow. However, Anne woke up. She opened her little eyes and looked at her father. She turned over and nestled her little body over. "Daddy hug." Hence, Yulin had originally planned to go to the gym. At this moment, he resigned himself to his fate and coaxed his little daughter. However, the little thing with the milky fragrance in his arms was especially comfortable. It even had a hypnotic effect. He thought that he would have to keep his eyes open for the whole night. In the end, he fell asleep first. Anne stared at him. She first pinched his face and then stared at him for a long time. Finally, she secretly kissed him. She liked her father. She nestled in her father's arms. Her little body had to be in his arms. This was very important. This was a must. Her little head had to be tucked under her father's chin and neck. This was so that her father could easily kiss her little head when he lowered his head. After adjusting, Anne went to sleep happily. At night, she had a dream. She dreamt of a big gray wolf and a little white rabbit getting married in a big forest. They gave birth to a little white rabbit who was very beautiful. The little white rabbit was called Anne. Anne had a beautiful dream. She laughed so hard that she was about to wake up. She did not wake up. Yulin woke up, looking at his little lover who was laughing so hard in his arms. He lowered his head and kissed the little fellow. His mind emptied again, and he fell into a deep sleep amidst the milky fragrance. Shiuli was the first to wake up in the morning. It was not even 7 o'clock. It was already dawn. When she opened her eyes, she felt that her whole body was sore. She lay on Shunin and greeted Yulin's family. Then she got up. He was not around. She had to see in and make breakfast for the children. As for the man who forced himself on her last night, he was not in her consideration. Shiuli sat up and realized that she only had a black shirt on, and it was Yulin's. He probably wouldn't wear this color anymore, so why did he keep it? She didn't change either. She just put on a nightgown and walked towards Anne's room. As soon as she pushed the door open, she saw the father and daughter hugging each other affectionately. Even their breathing was the same. She stood by the door. She suddenly felt a lump in her throat, and her feelings were complicated. She wanted to leave him. The reason why she was not firm was because of Anne. Anne liked him very much. She was naturally willing to be close to him. It was as if he was born to be her father. and did not need to transition at all. Bai Shiwili felt like a dog in her heart. Was it because he was particularly good-looking that Anan liked him so much? Just when she wanted to leave, the man had already woken up. His black eyes silently locked on her eyes, and he said in a low and hoarse voice, "Come here." Bai Shiwili took a step back. "I'll make breakfast. I'll make breakfast. You sleep with Anan for a while." He had already stood up. This book comes from Chapter 3668. "I just want to make you cry, oh," Bai Shiwili replied. Looking at the sportswear on his body, she was a little puzzled. He naturally saw her eyes and glared at her. Without saying anything, he just picked her up and put her next to Anan, rubbing her a few times. "Don't do this." She bit her lip. "Anan will wake up." His expression was a little strange. "How about we go back to the room?" She glared at him. "Yim Yulin, why do you always think about this kind of thing?" As soon as she finished speaking, she let out a low cry because he had picked her up and carried her all the way back to the master bedroom. Bai Shiwili bit her lips. "What are you doing?" He lowered his head and kissed her. "I have to go to work later, so I don't have time to do it. But you're right. I think about it all day long. I think about it when I come home at night, and I think about it when I go to work during the day. I'm always thinking about how to do you." She turned her face away shyly. "You're too shameless." Her face was so red that it looked like it was going to drip blood. Yim Yulin squinted at her and touched her lips gently. "Don't you miss me? Why don't I check?" She wouldn't because women couldn't stand being teased at all. It was impossible for her to not react to him like this. He didn't force her, but he smiled warmly, meaning that any adult would understand. She turned her face away and didn't want to talk to him. Yim Yulin looked at her and was about to get up, but she stopped him. "Wait a minute. I have something to say." He looked at her. Bai Shiwili sat up from the bed and looked at him. "Shouldn't you be with Yuan?" He stared at her, and her face was a little hot. She didn't dare to look at him, so she just lowered her face. "After all, you're husband and wife, and you raised Xiangnan." Yim Yulin stared at her with a deep look in his eyes, and she couldn't understand it. After a long time, he asked her in a low voice, "Do you really think I should accompany Yuan and Xiangnan? Shouldn't a normal person let Xiangnan recognize Mubai?" She couldn't say anything for a moment. Yim Yulin smiled again and didn't say anything else. He got up and said, "I'll make breakfast." She suddenly took his hand. He looked at her and said coldly, "You're not going to urge me to find Yuan anymore?" Bai Shiwili licked her lips and looked at him. "I don't know what you're thinking." His fingers gently stroked her face as he leaned in and said in a husky voice, "I'm thinking that you're as stupid as a pig." She exploded in anger and glared at him. This time, he really left and went to the kitchen to make breakfast. Bai Shiwili was startled for a moment, but she still ran over unwillingly. He skillfully made breakfast. She stared at him. "What did you mean just now?" Yim Yulin cut his toast and said calmly, "Bai Shiwili, let me tell you, my fire hasn't been vented yet. Are you sure you want to seduce me by dressing like this?" He pulled her into his arms and bit her ear. "I won't take responsibility if you piss me off." Startled, she took several steps back and glared at him. He looked at her and said very slowly, "You asked me what I think. I can tell you." As he said that, he put down the toast in his hand and smiled faintly. "I've endured not having a woman for 2 or 3 years. Of course, I want to do it with the rest of my body." Bai Shiwili's eyes widened, and then she ran away. There was a man's evil laughter behind her. When she returned to the bedroom, she thought about his words and suddenly thought of something. When Yuan hadn't done it before? Was that why he always seemed to have taken a can of village medicine? End of this chapter. Chapter 3669. She was in a daze for a long time. Yim Yulin was done preparing breakfast. He ate a little and went back to the room to change. After changing, he looked at the girl who was still in a daze. So he smiled. "What are you thinking about?" She looked up at him, her lips moving, but she didn't say anything. "Don't dare to ask." He looked at her. "Bai Shiwili, apart from being a stupid pig, you're also a coward." She bit her lips. "I'm not a coward." He didn't argue with her. He just smiled and kissed her lips. "Is it so hard to admit that you're possessive of me? Is it so hard to admit that you're overjoyed now?" She was a little angry at being exposed. She turned her face away and didn't let him kiss her. But he had kissed her. Yulin's voice was hoarse. I'll come back early tonight. Don't run around with an anymore. Why don't you hire an auntie? She was a little confused. She knew that his suggestion was good, but she hadn't thought about it yet. She couldn't decide if she should be with him. After all, there were some moral restraints. Yulin knew exactly what she was thinking in her heart. He just smiled and reached out to caress her face. Without saying anything, he muttered, "By Shueli, am I that kind of man in your heart? Think about it carefully. Also, I'm still angry." She watched him walk out in a daze. Then, she punched the blanket. Why was he angry? She didn't do it on purpose. What did she do? She was raped as soon as she came back. What else did he want? Shueli bit her lips angrily. She felt wronged. He told her to be obedient. She didn't want it. So, after she woke up she left the apartment with an in. She dragged a small suitcase to her parents' place. She believed that he wouldn't dare to do anything to her parents, even if he found her. She drove herself and then asked uneasily in the back seat, "Mom, are we not going to live with Dad anymore?" Shueli found a hard answer. She thought about it and said, "We're going to stay with Grandpa and Grandma for a few days." "Oh," she said quietly. "Mom, does Dad have another child?" Ainen was quite disappointed. She wasn't her dad's only child. She was quite bothered by this. Perhaps this was the possessiveness of a child. Shueli was also stunned for a moment, and then she softly agreed. She was afraid that Ainen would ask about illegitimate children again. If that happened, she wouldn't know what to say. However, Ainen only responded with an "oh" and did not ask further. Shueli's mood was a little complicated. She didn't know what to do now, so that Ainen could have a normal environment to grow up in. Yulin and Wen Yuan were married. She couldn't let them divorce for herself and Ainen. Mubai lost his memory. Even if he didn't lose his memory, he and Wen Yuan might not be able to go to the end. She couldn't be so selfish. Just like that, with extremely complicated feelings, she drove to her parents' apartment. When she carried Ainen out of the car and then whispered, "Mom, it doesn't matter. No matter how many children Dad has, I'm still Dad's." These words sounded sweet, but Shueli's face darkened. "Ainen, I gave birth to you." Ainen looked at her anxiously before saying softly, "Without Daddy, you wouldn't have been able to give birth." "Mommy, I heard people say that giving birth is very painful. I found out last night. Daddy made you cry. Is it very painful?" This book comes from Chapter 3670. Shueli's face darkened. Ainen stared at her with her big eyes. "Dad said I want to buy shares. Does that mean I'll have an Ainen after that?" She hugged Shueli's neck and said softly, "Mom, give birth to another one. Then we'll have 2 babies." Shueli rolled her eyes. "I'm not a pig. Mom is not a pig. I'm a sow." Ainen giggled. "A sow can give birth to several babies at a time." Shueli was speechless. "Who taught you all this?" Ainen betrayed her father very quickly. "It's Dad. He said he wants to have more babies with Mom. He said that if Mom cries at night, the baby should not come out. Otherwise, the babies will be too scared to come out." Shueli was about to faint. This wasn't something the leader would say. It was a hooligan. He would teach children bad things like this. "Don't tell others about this, okay?" She could only tell Ainen this way. Ainen nodded. "I know. Dad said it's a secret." Shueli rolled her eyes. Ainen was poisoned by Yulin. As they talked, they arrived at the apartment where Mr. and Mrs. Bai lived. The door opened, and Mrs. Bai's face was twisted with excitement. Shueli is back. Then, she hugged Ainen and kissed her. This is the first time I've seen Ainen. Ainen was not shy with strangers. She called her grandmother affectionately. Mrs. Bai looked at Ainen's buzz cut and sighed. Her gaze was also a little complicated. "Surely, Ainen's hair is too casual." Shueli smiled and closed the door. "It's safe this way. There are so many perverts outside. I think you're the first pervert." Mrs. Bai had recovered and returned to her old self. She scolded Shueli. In the past, Shueli hated it. But now, she felt warmth and an indescribable peace of mind. She smiled. "I'll leave a doll's head in the future, right?" If she dared to cut Ainen's hair again, Yulin would probably be the first to punish her. Mrs. Bai was satisfied. Then she thought of something. By the way, how are you and Yi Mulin? After asking this question, Mrs. Bai stopped. It was better for Nin to avoid it. So she handed Nin over to Mr. Bai and took her to the children's room to play. Mrs. Bai took her daughter to the sofa to care about her. Bai Shuali thought about it and smiled. That's it. Mom, you know he has a family. Mrs. Bai was much more open-minded now. Have you been with him these past few days? Bai Shuali nodded vigorously. Mrs. Bai thought about it and sighed. I can see that he likes you. Yi Zhenggang hurt our family, and Mulin's mother was hurt too. It's hard for Mulin. You have to understand. But about his family, Shuali, it's not that I'm heartless, but women have to be selfish sometimes. When she was pregnant, you were pregnant too. You left because of us. As long as Yi Mulin likes you, it's reasonable for him to divorce and remarry with you. Mrs. Bai felt sorry for her daughter. Shuali had suffered a lot in the past few years. They couldn't help but drag her down. In fact, they knew about Yi Mulin's contributions to the Bai family. Things are different now. Yi Zhenggang had retired. They could accept it. Yi Zhenggang was Yi Zhenggang, and Yi Mulin was Yi Mulin. Yi Zhenggang, that bastard, did everything he could to make life difficult for the Bai family. In the end, he became a loner. He deserved it. If Shuali remarried Mulin, he would be even more angry with the old bastard. Mrs. Bai thought about it and felt good. There were many versions of it. Bai Shuali smiled bitterly. Let's talk about it later. In fact, I'm a little strange with him. If it weren't for Nin, I don't think it would be possible. Mrs. Bai was anxious when she heard it. The child has been born for him. Why can't you ask for a little more? Then she said, Shuali, I tell you, men can't be too spoiled. If you give in to him a little, you will really become his mistress in the future. What do you think about an Anne's future? Bai Shuali was a little embarrassed. What about Xiangnan? It's certain that he and Wen Yuan have no feelings for each other, but Xiangnan also needs a father. Mrs. Bai looked around and seemed a little nervous. Then she came over and whispered, Shuali, don't you think Xiangnan looks like someone? Mrs. Bai hated Yi Zhenggang to the core. After Yi Mulin and Wen Yuan got married and gave birth to Yi Xianan, Mrs. Bai naturally sneaked a peek at the hospital many times. She covered her head and secretly peeked at places like the hospital. In the end, she discovered something terrible. Bai Shuali's heart skipped a beat. Who does he look like? This book comes from Chapter 3671. Mrs. Bai said mysteriously, Don't you think he looks like Yi Zhenggang? Bai Shuali was drinking tea. Hearing this, she spat out the tea in her mouth. She looked at her mother with an indescribable expression. In her heart, she was thinking the doctor said that her mother had recovered from her illness. Now, she really doubted it. Was she really recovered? Bai Shuali calmed herself down and coughed. Mom, what are you thinking? It's normal for a child to look like his grandfather. Mrs. Bai continued to speak mysteriously, but they don't look normal. They don't look like Mulin. Do you think Mulin didn't do it with Wen Yuan? And Yi Zhenggang didn't have a wife, so they slept together? Mrs. Bai's thoughts were completely influenced by the old ladies after she was hospitalized. Bai Shuali didn't dare to provoke her, so she said, It's impossible for it to be with Yi Zhenggang. Mrs. Bai nodded, as if she had accepted her daughter's words. Bai Shuali said in a low voice, Mom, these words can only be said at home. You can't say it outside. Although the child was Mu Bai's, if Wen Yuan didn't want to make it public or couldn't be with Mu Bai, the child could only be Yi Mulin's. If Yi Mu Bai was willing to accept it, no one could say anything, including her. Bai Shuali thought of Yi Mu Bai. She missed the days when she chased after Mu Bai, because at that time, there was someone who would always follow her. She was lost in thought for a moment. Then she smiled. Why did she think so much? It was all in the past, but she really missed it. Bai Shuali came back to reality and patted the back of her mother's hand. Mom, I'll accompany you to cook. Mrs. Bai nodded and smiled, as if she had forgotten what she said before. Actually, she had recovered from her illness, but her memory wasn't as good as before. She would always forget things. But compared to before, she was much better. During the most difficult time, it was Yi Mulin who protected the Bai family. Bai Shuali knew this very well. She and Mrs. Bai were cooking. When it was almost noon, Yi Mulin called. He must have finished his work. Bai Shuili picked up the phone and asked, "Are you translating at home?" "No, I'm cooking." She pretended to be indifferent. Yi Mulin paused. "Which house are you cooking at?" Bai Shuili was a little confused. After a long time, she said, "In the apartment." I called the landline at home, but no one answered. His voice was cold. "What did you take it in?" Bai Shuili immediately understood that he was thinking of ways to monitor her. Just like before, he was just sure to put her under house arrest. She was angry and snorted. "Yi Mulin, I don't need to report to you where I'm taking it in." On the other side, Yi Mulin was playing with a fish tank in his hands. He said softly, "Do you still remember Little White?" Bai Shuili was stunned. "You said you made it into turtle soup?" He chuckled. "If you don't come home before 5 o'clock tonight, I'll really make it into tortoise soup for my subordinates." "All right, I'll take a photo for you later." Little White has grown quite big and is quite meaty. It should taste very good. Thigh is thigh. Xiong is xiong. Bai Shuili's face was about to smoke. He said little tortoise, but why did she have a feeling that he was talking about her? What did he mean by xiong is xiong and thigh is xiong? She hung up the phone, and the other side quickly sent a photo. It was a photo of a little tortoise, and it had grown up. She was even more surprised by the photo frame on the desk. The person in the photo was her, Bai Shuili, who was in her 20s. This book came from Chapter 3672. Bai Shuili looked at him, and her eyes were watery. She felt like crying. After a long time, he called, and Bai Shuili picked up the call. Yi Mulin's voice was hoarse. "Have you thought about it?" There was silence on the other side. After a long time, she suddenly said, "Then you can stew Xiao Xiao Bai, as long as you are willing." He was a little surprised. Then he smiled. His voice was low and hoarse. It was as if he was teasing her ear through the phone. He said, "Shuili, you're taking advantage of my reluctance, aren't you?" She bit her lip and felt like she was being teased. Then she hung up the phone. On the other side, Yi Mulin looked at the phone and smiled. He put down the phone and played with Xiao Xiao Bai with his slender fingers. Xiao Xiao Bai was originally hiding its head, but now it felt the warmth of his fingers and quietly stretched its head out. Yi Mulin's voice was low and elegant. "Yes." Then he smiled again. He could easily guess where Bai Shuili had gone. Other than the Bai family, there was no other place she could go. It would be easy to catch her. However, he heard that Mulin and Wen Yuan weren't doing well. So he went to the hospital that night. Mubai was still there. He looked at Yi Mulin with a complicated expression. Yi Mulin was concerned about Xiangnan's condition. Wen Yuan said that he could be discharged in 2 days. Actually, Yi Mulin knew that he could stay for a few more days, but Wen Yuan avoided Mubai. Since he was here, Yi Mubai naturally had no reason to stay. However, he still smoked a few cigarettes with Yi Mulin before he left. It was very quiet in the dark corridor of the hospital. Any sound near or far seemed so abrupt. In the flickering light of the cigarette, but Yi Mubai's handsome face was a little unpredictable. After a long time, he asked his brother, "Don't you love Wen Yuan?" Yi Mulin smiled and leaned against the wall. "Why do you ask?" "Bai Shuili and the child she gave birth to for you. She is your ex-wife, isn't she?" Yi Mubai stared at him. Yi Mulin raised his head and smoked a cigarette. Then he smiled and said, "Looks like you've investigated everything in the past 2 days." "Yes, I've always liked Bai Shuili, is that wrong? I didn't break up with her willingly. What's wrong with a successful man trying to get his ex-wife back to be with the woman he loves the most? I don't think I'm wrong." Yi Mubai ground his teeth. "What about Wen Yuan? What is she to you?" Yi Mulin looked at his beloved brother and smiled. "Wen Yuan is a very suitable wife, more suitable than Shirley." Yi Mubai sneered. "Bai Shuili is for love, and Wen Yuan is just a decoration. Is that what you mean?" Yi Mulin was still smiling. "That's about it." "Why, Mubai, are you uncomfortable because of Shuel Li or Wen Yuan? You used to quarrel with me because of Shirley." Yi Mubai stared at his face for a few seconds before saying coldly, "It has nothing to do with me. You're on your own." He took a few steps forward and turned around to look at Yi Mulin. "If Wen Yuan goes to America, I can take care of him. But don't forget that he's your wife." Yi Mulin smiled faintly and left with Yi Mu Bai. Yi Mulin smoked another cigarette and went back to the ward with his back to Xiangnan. He asked, quarreled? Wen Yuan was making juice for Xiangnan. His hand paused for a moment, and he whispered, "No, it's..." She raised her head and looked at Yi Mulin. She felt at ease when facing Yi Mulin because he wasn't as emotional as Yi Mu Bai. He took care of her like a brother. She wanted to chat with more like-minded people about new wife number 1, husband addicted to pampering. On WeChat, she followed Yuda literature, talking about life and looking for confidence. Chapter 3673. I'm here to catch the runaway child. For Wen Yuan sometimes wondered why she didn't fall in love with Yi Mulin. It was probably because he gave her a warm feeling. In fact, men wouldn't be so gentle towards the woman they liked. She knew that clearly, so it was impossible for her and Yi Mulin. She thought for a moment and said in a low voice, "I think I might be wrong." Her voice was getting more and more bitter. From the moment he disappeared a few years ago, from the moment he didn't like me, I shouldn't have persisted. She raised her head. Maybe we shouldn't have gotten married. Maybe I shouldn't have had hope, but I don't regret it. Because Xiangnan is so good, and so are you. They treat me very well. Yi Mulin sighed and touched her hair. Wen Yuan, no matter what, as long as you are willing, I will always take care of you and Xiangnan. Don't worry about Xiueli. She's not what she looks like on the surface. She's actually a very good girl. Wen Yuan smiled. In your heart, Bai Xiueli has always been a little girl, right? Yes, little girl. Yi Mulin smiled too. Don't think too much. Just be happy. Wen Yuan nodded. That night, Yi Mulin stayed to accompany Xiangnan. Xiangnan was quite happy and wanted to sleep with Yi Mulin. It was rare for the little guy to be so clingy. Of course, Yi Mulin would satisfy him. In the middle of the night, Xiangnan couldn't fall asleep. Yi Mulin touched his little head. What's wrong, Xiangnan? Xiangnan pursed his lips and said in a low voice, Uncle Mu Bai is my father, right? Yi Mulin's mood was a bit complicated. He thought for a moment and said in a low voice, Does Xiangnan like Uncle? Yes, but Uncle doesn't seem to like Mommy. I want Mommy to be happy. Xiangnan hugged Yi Mulin. I'll go wherever Mommy goes. I'll follow Mommy. Yi Mulin's heart was a bit bitter. Xiangnan was so young, but he was already very sensible. It made his heart ache. He hugged the little guy and said softly, If Xiangnan is willing, Uncle can always take care of you. Xiangnan didn't say anything and just hugged him. Yi Mulin closed his eyes and let out a long breath. He left early the next morning and communicated with the doctor to confirm that there was no problem. He went to the office and sat there, still thinking about Wen Yuan and Mu Bai. As for himself and Bai Xiueli, their relationship was already very stable. In the past, he could control her, and it would be the same now and in the future. As he thought about it, he looked at Xiao Bai, who was at his desk. Hence, he pressed the internal line to call for Secretary Li. Secretary Li came over. Chief. Yi Mulin reached out his hand and took out the little turtle from a box. He placed it on his palm and gently rubbed it for a while. He smiled casually and said, Help me make a trip to the Bai family. I'll write you the address and send something over. All right, go and wrap it up like a cake. Put this little white inside and let her open it herself. Don't tell anyone. After he said that, Secretary Li widened his eyes and looked at his boss. It's not good to send a tortoise back, is it? We'll surely send it back to you. That wouldn't be good. Yi Mulin looked at his secretary and snorted coldly. You're getting better at talking. Secretary Li squeezed out a smile and chuckled. In order to make her boss happy and to eat, she had to send the tortoise. An hour later, the fresh tortoise was beautifully wrapped and sent to Bai Xiueli. Secretary Li coughed softly. This is a gift from the chief. End of this chapter. Chapter 3674. I am here to catch a runaway 5. Bai Xiueli looked at Secretary Li with an amused expression. Secretary Li smiled awkwardly. No matter what, it's a token of appreciation from the bureau chief. I'll take my leave first. She had to leave as soon as possible. If she didn't leave, how could she stay for the new year? Thinking about the little tortoise in the beautifully packaged box, Secretary Li's scalp went numb. The bureau chief was too evil. Secretary Li ran off. Bai Shuali looked at the box and flipped it around. Then she said, "No one celebrated their birthday." Mrs. Bai reminded her, "Is it your anniversary? Are you getting married or something?" "No." Bai Shuali opened the box. "It's just an ordinary day. Also, this box is very light. Is it cotton candy?" As she thought about it, she opened it layer by layer. Then she was stunned. There was nothing inside except for a little tortoise. The tortoise stared at her with its bean-like eyes, making her hair stand on end. Then she thought of something and picked up the little tortoise. Little white? Of course, the little tortoise couldn't answer her. He just lay on her palm and stared at her with his beady eyes. Bai Shuali's fingers gently caressed her tortoise head. "I wanted to write asterisk, 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 asterisk. Haha, it's not appropriate to think about it." Little Xiao Bai instinctively shrunk back, but after a while, it carefully popped out its little head and looked at Bai Shuali eagerly. The scene of them recognizing their kin was very touching. Bai Shuali bit her lip and said softly, "Xiao Xiao Bai, you didn't get stewed by Daddy, did you? You've grown so big. You're a big girl now." Bai Anan looked up from the side. "Mommy, does the fact that this little turtle has grown up mean that he can mate now?" Bai Shuali almost fainted. She looked at Bai Anan and asked, "Who taught you this?" Bai Anan stuck out her tongue. "It's written in the books that when animals grow up, they have to mate. It's the same for humans. Otherwise, how can they reproduce?" Bai Shuali still wanted to say something, but Mrs. Bai actually spoke up for Anan. "Anan is right. Shuali, you don't know that when I was in the hospital, I saw too many infertile men. They were all killed by gold after drinking too much. They can't even give a child to a woman. It's useless to have such a man. So, Yi Mulin is not bad. The yield is not bad." Mrs. Bai was talking about Yi Mulin openly and secretly. She was just short of saying that Yi Mulin was strong in that aspect. Bai Shuali couldn't stand her anymore. She found a fish tank and put Little White in it. Then she went downstairs with him to pick a few beautiful stones and put them in. She even got some water plants and then loved it so much that she kept lying there and looking around. Bai Shuali knew that Yi Mulin would probably come over tonight. So during dinner, she slowly said to Mrs. Bai, "Mom, I asked Cece out." Mrs. Bai wasn't happy when she heard that. "You can meet Cece at home if you want to. You have to spend money outside, and you eat her food every time." Although she didn't quite agree, Mrs. Bai still turned around and took out her private 20,000 yuan. She put it in Bai Shuali's palm. "These few years, Cece has taken good care of the two of us. She's even better to you. Treat her well." Bai Shuali declined. "Mom, I have money," Mrs. Bai said without thinking. "Although you can earn money by translating books, it's very limited. You also have to take care of Anan. We sold our house and have some money in our hands. If not you, who should we spend it on? Girls should live a more refined life, or else no one will look at you." Chapter 3675. It has to be said that Mrs. Bai is still the delicate Mrs. Bai. Even if the family has fallen, the spirit in her bones is still there. Bai Shuali still didn't take it and said softly, "Mom, I have money. Recently, I read a book and it sold very well. I got hundreds of thousands of royalties. In addition, some producers want to ask me to write a script. If I succeed, it will be better and better in the future." Mrs. Bai was silent for a while, and then whispered, "Shuali, Mom knows that you can work and support yourself now, but Mom still can't bear to let you go. I still love you. Think about how you used to live like a prince and didn't do anything. Although you can earn money outside, Mom is afraid that you will look at other people's faces. I still feel sorry for you. Mom, who doesn't look at other people's faces and don't feel wronged when doing things outside. Even Dad used to be Yi Mulin, and now there are still times when it is difficult. Don't think too much. I'm fine now." She wiped away Mrs. Bai's tears. "Mom, no matter what happens between me and Yi Mulin, I don't want him to support me anymore. At least I can earn money, so that no matter when I can live in this world, I can give in and you a stable life." After she finished, Mrs. Bai couldn't help crying again and whispered, "Shuali, you have grown up. You have really grown up. Mom is very happy. You are right. It is reasonable. Look at me. I'm a bloody example. I can't do anything to help your father when he collapsed. I can only blame you for being sick and dragging you down like that. Surely, I'm really sorry. Bai Shuili also felt bad in her heart. She reluctantly smiled. Mom, what are you talking about? As long as you are well, it's fine. Our family is fine now. Don't talk about things that are unfair. She changed the topic. Don't make me cry, or else Cece will spout nonsense again. Her imagination is very rich. Speaking of this, Mrs. Bai suddenly looked at the bruise on her daughter's chin. By the way, what's going on with your chin? Does Mulin like something different now? Bai Shuili's expression was as if she was constipated. Mrs. Bai thought about it and said, he is under a lot of pressure. If he has any requirements, you should try to cooperate with him. It's nothing. Bai Shuili's face was as red as blood. Mom, what are you thinking about? Yi Mulin made it. Mrs. Bai's face was still full of confusion. I know he pinched me, but is Mulin very rough? If that's the case, I have to persuade him. He can't be too rough. This kind of thing cannot be consensual. Bai Shuili rolled her eyes and said, Mom, it's not what you think. It's really just a simple pinch. Mrs. Bai wasn't too happy. Has he been cooped up for too long? Has he become a pervert? Bai Shuili felt that it wasn't Yi Mulin who was a pervert, but her mother who was now a pervert. His thinking was so avant-garde. She met Lin Cece in a bar for a drink. She couldn't help but complain, Cece, do you think my parents will live without sex for the rest of their lives? That's why she speaks so boldly. Lin Cece was dying from laughter. She tilted her head and said, you can ask her directly. She's already so straightforward. Bai Shuili laughed. I'm sorry, but what if there isn't? Wouldn't that agitate her to death? Lin Cece couldn't stop laughing. She leaned on the table and didn't get up for a long time. She wanted to chat with more like-minded people about new wife number 1, husband, addicted to pampering. She followed Yuda Literature on WeChat, talking about life, looking for bosom friends. Chapter 3676. Bai Shuili rubbed her forehead. Is it that funny? Lin Cece laughed for a while and looked up. Yes, it's so funny. Shuili, it's so funny when you think of what your mother said. Bai Shuili glanced at her and took the glass. Drink. Lin Cece was also very bold. After drinking half a glass, she clinked glasses with Bai Shuili. Cheers to our reunion. Putting down the wine glass, she asked in a low voice, Cece, let's settle down. Don't go back to America. What's so good about America? We just have to eat fried chicken every day. How can it compare to living in B City? If you stay in B City, we can still get together often. Besides, Uncle and Annie aren't young anymore. They'll be lonely without you. Bai Shuili was stunned. After a while, she forced a smile. Cece, you're right. Sometimes, I also feel that I'm a coward. She put her hands in front of her. At that time, I was very scared. I found out that I was pregnant, but when Yuan was pregnant with Mubai's child, Mubai was missing and it was very likely that he was gone. My father was in prison and my mother was crazy. I had no choice. Lin Cece put her fingers on the back of her hand and whispered, Shuili, that's because you didn't learn to trust Yi Mulin. I can't say anything else, but at least he can take good care of you and win you on, just like now. Just like now? Bai Shuili was a little lost. Lin Cece smiled faintly and said, yes, just like now. Shuili, have you ever thought that Xiangnan is Yi Mubai's child? No matter how you look at it, no matter which man wants Wen Yuan, that man won't be Yi Mubai. In other words, no matter who happens in this world, Yi Mubai and Wen Yuan can't be together. They can only be a nominal couple. He just wants to give Wen Yuan's child a part of the Yi family. I think if you didn't leave, they wouldn't have gotten married. After getting married, you would probably feel safe and dare to come back. Lin Cece's analysis was very logical. Bai Shuili was stunned. After a while, she murmured, I think he said that once. He said that he hasn't had a woman for a few years. Did he say that after you did it? Lin Cece smirked. Bai Shuili blushed and stared at her. Lin Cece, does Gu Zane know that you're so bad? Lin Cece was stunned for a moment. Then she smiled faintly. Why mention him? Nothing to do with me? As soon as she finished speaking, Bai Shuili's face had already moved in front of hers. Is it really okay? Yeah, Lin Cece said stubbornly. Bai Shuili's face was full of disbelief. Look at your face. I don't believe that nothing happened. Lin Cece was stunned. She touched her face. You can tell? Bai Shiwili couldn't stop laughing. After laughing for a long time, she said, Cece, you really believed it? Now you're confessing without being pressed. Lin Cece was speechless. Bai Shiwili handed him a glass of wine. Drink this. She wanted to get Lin Cece drunk, but how could her alcohol tolerance be enough for Lin Cece? Asterisk while they were drinking, Yim Yulin was at the Bai family's house. As soon as she opened the door, Mrs. Bai was stunned. Yulin, Mom. Yim Yulin walked in and helped Mrs. Bai. He was holding some supplements in his hand. While changing his shoes, he asked naturally, Is Dad here? Book from Chapter 3677. Mr. Bai walked out. Yulin? He paused and said, Shirley went out. Oh. Yim Yulin's voice was light. Did she see Lin Cece? Mrs. Bai came back to her senses and took the things in his hands. Did you ask Shirley? I guessed. Yim Yulin smiled and took off his coat. Isn't it asleep? Mrs. Bai's expression softened at the mention of her granddaughter. I just coaxed her to sleep. She's such a good girl. Yim Yulin's voice became soft. I'll go see her. Then he went to the guest room quietly and came back after checking on, and Mrs. Bai had already brewed the precious Da Hong Pao tea and put it on the coffee table. Mr. Bai set up the chessboard. Let's play 2 games. I don't know when Shirley will come back. Mrs. Bai agreed. The couple treated Yim Yulin like they used to. They treated him as a son-in-law. Yim Yulin sat down and played chess with Mr. Bai. A mature man would give in to his elders, especially when he felt guilty towards Mr. Bai. When Mr. Bai was in power, he took good care of the Yi family. Although he had offended some people, he was still an upright man. Yim Yulin couldn't change the ending and could only try his best to make it up to him. Fortunately, Mr. Bai was very open-minded now. He would not be too attached to the past. The two of them played chess and drank tea. Mrs. Bai accompanied them for a while and refilled their cups. Then, she went to accompany an inn. Before going to bed, she asked Yim Yulin to stay the night. Of course, Yim Yulin agreed. Mr. Bai listened with a gentle look on his face. Mrs. Bai looked down and left. She glanced at Yim Yulin's fingers. They were clean, slender, and beautiful. She thought of the bruise on Shirley's chin. It didn't look like it was caused by such beautiful fingers. Yim Yulin remembered her look, but he didn't show it on his face and continued to play chess with Mr. Bai. At 12 o'clock, Lin Cece called. She sounded a little breathless. Yim Yulin, when you have time, come over and take this night owl home. Her alcohol tolerance is terrible. Lin Cece almost wanted to cry. She didn't know that Bai Shiwili was so bad when she was drunk. She looked like she was about to pounce on her. Lin Cece was not a man and couldn't satisfy her. She could only call Yim Yulin. Yim Yulin listened quietly. After asking for the address, he looked at Mr. White. Shirley is drunk. I'm going to pick her up. Mr. White replied with an "oh" and started to collect the chess pieces. After thinking for a moment, he asked softly, Yulin, there is something I want to when Yuan and I are divorced. Dad, in my heart, Shweli has always been my wife. Also, my mother knows that Xiangnan is Mubai's child. Yim Yulin explained respectfully. Mr. White was startled, and then he said in a low voice, Then, you and Shirley shouldn't come back tonight. Find a place to stay for the night. His words were a little vague, but it was actually something like that. Actually, Mr. White was thinking that it hadn't been easy for Yim Yulin these few years. As a man, he understood. Yim Yulin looked down and smiled. Thank you, Dad. I'll bring Shweli back tomorrow night. Mr. White saw him out. Seeing his hurried steps, he smiled slightly. Back then, when he married Shweli to Mu Bai, it was because he could see that Mu Lin liked Shweli. If he didn't do something ruthless, this brat probably wouldn't admit it even after 100 years. He was also very arrogant, but in recent years, he had calmed down a lot. He was a good seedling, and he was also handsome. He was much better than these old things. This book came from Chapter 3678. When Yim Yulin drove to the bar, it was already late at night. Lin Cece was guarding a drunkard and looked helpless. When she saw Yim Yulin coming over, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. She's finally here. I really can't do anything to her alone. I can't move her but she refuses to leave. She said she's waiting for a hero to come and pick her up. Lin Cece said helplessly, she thinks she's Xia Fairy. Then she looked at Yi Mulin and smiled happily. You don't look like Joker, either. I'm born in the year of the monkey, Yi Mulin said calmly. Lin Cece felt that this answer was really harsh. Before Yi Mulin bent down to carry by Xueli, he looked at the bottles on the table and counted them. There were at least 15 or 16 bottles. He frowned and said, she drank all of them. Lin Cece couldn't help but roll her eyes. Big brother, I drank at least 10 bottles. Xueli's alcohol tolerance is too low now. Back then, she still had the nerve to tell me that she was some kind of nightclub princess. I think she's more like a nightclub sow. Yi Mulin carried by Xueli and walked towards the door. He said in a low voice, let's go. I'll send you back. Lin Cece followed behind and shouted, then you'll pay the bill. We drank the best tonight. It'll cost at least 100,000. Xueli and I are poor now. Yi Mulin turned to look at her. Lin Cece squeezed out a smile. Walking to the bar, he held the woman in his arms with one hand and swiped his card. Then he looked at Lin Cece and said disapprovingly, don't drink so much with her in the future. Men don't like drunkards. Guze was one of those men. Lin Cece stuck out her tongue behind his back and followed him into the car. It was very late at night. She didn't want to take a taxi back. It was a little dangerous. Moreover, it would be a waste not to use Xueli's man. He didn't care what kind of leader he was. He was Xueli's man. Lin Cece sat in the back seat of the car with a clear conscience until he sent her to the apartment. She thought that was it, but when she opened the car door, Yi Mulin said, you and Guze are still the same. The reason he asked this was because she was still living here. If she was with Guze, she could have a better material life. He was also a little puzzled. All these years, Guze and Lin Cece clearly hadn't completely separated, and sometimes they would even sleep together. Why didn't they take things a step further? After Yi Mulin asked, Lin Cece was a little surprised. She was stunned for a while and then asked, did you change your household registration? Yi Mulin sat in the car and looked at a sports car in front of him. He smiled silently. I'm just concerned. Shirley said that frivolous is her best sugar daddy. Lin Cece snorted. At least she has a conscience. She opened the car door and got out. She paused for a moment. Yi Mulin, don't make her sad anymore. Don't make her worry or be in a difficult position. Women don't have many years of youth left, and she has given all of them to you. Even after so many things have happened, she still loves you. When she spoke, her voice was especially gentle, and her gaze was also very gentle as she looked at by Xueli. Yi Mulin smiled. I know. When he saw the car lights in front of him turn on, he smiled again and drove away with a bad intention, leaving Lin Cece standing there alone. Lin Cece was dazzled by the car lights and reached out to block them. At this moment, the lights went off and a person walked out of the car. It wasn't anyone else, but Guze, who had disappeared for about a month. They had been living like this for the past few years. He would occasionally come over, maybe for a night or a week. If he wanted to come, he would come whenever he wanted. Even when he came, she didn't chase him away. If he wanted to have sex with her, she would just treat it as a way to comfort her and her husband. Anyway, she had her physical needs. Besides, he was handsome, skilled, and had money. Sometimes he would come over and give her money, ranging from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. Sometimes he would also bring her gifts, bags, clothes, and whatnot. They were all quite expensive. Anyway, with her current ability, she couldn't afford them, so she accepted them and treated them as his rent. At this moment, he suddenly came over and saw Yi Mulin's car. Lin Cece suddenly understood. She seemed to have been framed by Yi Mulin. He had purposely said those words to make it seem like she didn't get out of the car. Guze must have thought that her wild man had sent her back. She broke Yi Mulin into a few pieces in her heart. Chapter 3679. Lin Cece sighed at her heart before walking over to Guze. She stood still and placed her hands behind her back. You're back. Guze had slammed the car door with a lot of force just now. With a loud bang, he seemed to be really angry. Lin Cece's attitude was as though she could run away at any moment if the situation was not right. Guze looked at her coldly under the streetlights. Whose car did you sit in? Lin Cece chuckled and flicked her hair. Are you jealous? Guze grabbed her wrist instantly and said in a displeased tone, Lin Cece. She tilted her head and looked at him. Oh, who are you to me? Why are you controlling me like this? With that said, she broke free from him and walked towards her apartment. She walked in the dark and said those words angrily. However, there was a faint smile on her lips. Guze stood there and looked at the direction in which she had left. Then he kicked the car door harshly. The car door that was worth more than 10 million instantly deformed a little. Well, there was no one else. Lin Cece stopped in her tracks and turned around to look at him. Are you angry? With his hand on the car door, he looked up at her and his eyes were a little red. Lin Cece stood in the dark and smiled quietly. Guze, I'm not wrong. We sleep together occasionally, but neither of us have promised each other. Even if you come over tonight and tell me that you're getting married tomorrow, I won't quarrel with you. We're just pals. Why do you have to take it so seriously? He looked at her for a long time and suddenly walked over. His voice was hoarse. Lin Cece, just how heartless are you? After so many years of companionship, you actually say that we're pals? He was practically growling out. Lin Cece, you drank in the middle of the night and were sent home by a wild man. Yet, you're saying such things to me. He grabbed her body and pressed her against the car door. He wanted to be rough with her, but did not dare to do anything to her. He could only get angry at himself. How far have you gotten with him? I haven't satisfied you yet, and you still want to find another man. Lin Cece was very brave. He's the one who came to find me. Guze lowered his head and inched closer to her face. His breath was hot and scalding. At this moment, he was like a fire dragon that wanted to melt her. Have you slept with him? Actually, he didn't think so, because that man had already left. If such an opportunity had passed, he wouldn't have left. Look at how alluring the little woman in his arms was right now. Her face was red from drinking, and the rest of her body was very white. She was so small in his arms. Lin Cece wanted to move away, but every time she moved, he would move to the other side and grab her to prevent her from escaping. Not only was she unable to escape, but she was also panting after a while. He seemed to be very concerned, his voice low and hoarse. Tell me, and I'll let you go. Lin Cece turned her face to the side. Her chest was pressed against his as she breathed heavily. In such a cold night, two young bodies pressed against each other, and in a short while, the smell changed. He hadn't appeared for a month, and she didn't know where he went. As soon as he came back, he looked as if he was catching her in the act of adultery. What right did he have? Lin Cece bit her lips and turned her head. Her two slender arms wrapped around his neck, and she raised her head to look into his eyes seductively. Let me go. Do you mean that you won't sleep with me tonight if you don't make love to me? Her words were simply deliberate. Guze's Adam's apple couldn't help but roll a few times when he thought of the specific scene this book came from. Chapter 3680. After a long while, he said, Tell me first, what's your relationship with him? Huh? Lin Cece sneaked out from under his arm. By Shuali's man? Is it clear enough? Is it clear enough? Guze narrowed his eyes, grabbed her hand, and pressed her against the car. He leaned over and kissed her fiercely. When she moved, he raised her hand above her head and pressed it against the roof of the car. His actions were simply rough. Lin Cece was in pain and said softly, My arm is about to break. Her voice was hoarse, as if she was complaining and acting coquettishly. Guze was still kissing her hungrily, as if he wanted to eat her up. He paused and said, Bear with it. She felt wronged and turned her face away from him, but he always found a way to kiss her, and he loved to kiss her from her cheeks to her chin. Lin Cece avoided him, and when he kissed her like this, she almost cried. Her tears wet her face, and Guze also tasted the salty taste. He pressed his lips against hers and asked softly, Don't you like me kissing you? You weren't like this before. He thought about it and felt uneasy again. You've had another man this month, huh? She shook her head and cried out in pain. Only then did he realize that he was holding her hand at an inhumane angle, and he immediately felt a little guilty. He let go of her and rubbed her hand, saying, Why didn't you say so earlier? She bit her lips. I told you earlier, but you ignored me again. He rubbed her hand for a while and let go. Let's go up. Lin Cece paused and said, Guze, I have something to say to you. I have something to say to you too. He looked at her. Let's talk upstairs. She thought about it and didn't object. They went to her apartment. It wasn't very new, but it was warm and small. As soon as they entered the door, he pressed her against the door and kissed her passionately. Lin Cece was softened by him soon. It had been a month, and she missed it too. He had done it once behind the door. Then he had carried her into the bedroom and cleaned the gun on her bed twice more. He had done it so many times that he had spent the better part of the night. Guze's energy, which he hadn't vented for a month, was almost exhausted. He lay on the bed and smoked, with the petite woman in his arms. In the dim light, he suddenly said, Lin Cece, let's get married. The body in his arms stiffened, and then she said softly in the darkness, Guze, what I want to tell you is that I want to go to City A to go to my parents' side. They need my care. Guze pressed down the cigarette, but this doesn't conflict with our marriage. I can bring your parents to B-City to take care of them. Cece, after so many years, we should have a result. Lin Cece looked at him and said in a low voice after a long time, If I go to City, you can also go to find me. Guze's eyes were a little unhappy. He stared at her eyes and said, Do you think that I'm with you just to sleep with you and be satisfied as soon as I put on my pants at dawn? She didn't say anything, but propped herself up and leaned against the headboard of the bed. She also took a cigarette and lit it. After taking a puff, she looked at him faintly. Guze, I didn't mean that, but I've never thought about getting married. You can think about it now. His voice was heavy. This book comes from Chapter 3681. Lin Cece looked at him and smiled after a while. I have to do as you say, right? That's why I don't want marriage, because I don't want to entrust myself to a man. If I lose him, I'll lose everything, and I won't be able to take it. She looked down. Isn't it good for us to be like this? He glared at her. Is that so? Do you really think it's good? Lin Cece smiled. What else? What good is there in being your Mrs. Gu? Other than having endless money, I'm just an unhappy bird. I don't want to be like that anymore. Guze's eyes and breathing were painful. His voice was unbelievably hoarse. Lin Cece, do you want me to beg you? She put out the cigarette and shook her head. No, really, Guze, I don't want you to beg me. I just don't want to get married. He was silent. She continued. If you feel that you can't accept this, we can end it. Actually, we didn't promise anything. It's fine as long as you don't come. Guze suddenly smiled. Lin Cece, I'm just a friend to you, right? It doesn't matter who I am. The main thing is that I'm safe, healthy, and skilled. So you chose me, right? There was a touch of sadness in his eyes. It's been a few years. I thought you had accepted me and were ready. I was gone for a month. I chose a diamond ring with my own hands. I thought you would like it, but you preferred freedom. Angered, he got up and put on his pants. After pulling it up, he took out a box from his pocket and threw it to her. If you don't like it, throw it away. I may not need it in the future anyway. Listen to what he has heard tonight. What does he mean by coming and going as he pleases? For the past few years, he had given all his spare time to a woman. She didn't feel anything at all. He cooked for her, stayed up late with her, and even ran the bathwater for her. He had done everything a man could do. It had been a few years, not a few days. She said she didn't want him, and that meant she didn't want him anymore. She treated him like a dispensable object. I'm not going to serve you anymore. After Guze put on his pants, his eyes were a little hot, and he felt a little wronged. Criminals still had their sentences. She had sentenced him to death. Before he died, she had enjoyed his flesh to her heart's content. After enjoying it, she had kicked him away. It was really good. Although Guze was particularly angry, he was very slow in putting on his shirt. Lin Cece, who was lying on the bed, looked at his back. Even his back was angry. He must be furious. Indeed, for the past few years, they had been living like a married couple. Zhou would be together for 3 to 4 days a week, and when he came back from a business trip, he would directly bring his luggage to her place to spend the night. He was probably angry because he felt that she had a heart of stone and had ruined his good intentions. She opened the box and froze. It was a top-notch fiery red blood diamond, dazzling. Lin Cece watched for a while, then asked Guze softly, Did you do it yourself? Guzé snorted coldly. Of course. Which man do you think would spend so much effort on a woman in her early 30s? Lin Cece took out the ring and tried it on her finger. It was just right. She looked at the fire color and snorted. Yes, she's in her 30s. Mr. Gu, you have to endure such an old woman. Guzé was angry. He turned his head and said, Lin Cece, don't go too far. Book from Chapter 36, 82. Lin Cece smiled. How am I going too far? You gave it to me. I can't wear it until I marry you, or throw it away. As she spoke, she plucked it out and threw it toward the window. Guzé's eyes were bloodshot. He stared at the window for a while, before turning back to glare at Lin Cece. You woman, how hateful. As he spoke, he picked up his coat with one hand and was about to walk out. Damn it, he didn't want to take this anymore. However, he had only taken a few steps when a soft body pressed against him from behind. Her slender arms were wrapped around his waist, and her face was pressed against his back. Then an ice-cold object appeared in his hand. He looked down and saw that it was the fire diamond. For a moment, Guzé's mood was very complicated. He coughed lightly and asked, What do you mean? Lin Cece pressed her face against his back and said softly, I've thought about it carefully. Girls can't get married casually. Do you think I'll marry you just because you threw the ring to me? I'm not a big yellow dog by the roadside. Guzé held the ring and said in a hoarse voice, Then you want to propose? Lin Cece walked over to him. She was only wearing a silk nightgown, and there was nothing underneath. To be honest, he didn't want to propose at all. He wanted to carry her to bed, but experience told him not to be too impulsive. Sometimes the sexier a woman was, the more emotional she was. He held the ring and looked at her. Will you agree if I propose? Lin Cece pursed her lips. You could try. Guzé stared at her little face. She smiled faintly and extended her hand to him. That hand was incomplete. It was missing a little finger. She said in a low voice, Guzé, wear it on your middle finger. Guzé looked at the back of her hand quietly. Instead of putting the ring on her finger, he lowered his head and kissed her fingertips. His voice was low and hoarse. Lin Cece, I love you. After saying that, he slid the ring into her middle finger bit by bit. When the size was perfect, both of them cried, but with some restraint. Lin Cece, the previous rejection was just words of anger, wasn't it? He kissed her fingers, looked at the dazzling light, and said in a low voice, Please let me take care of you in the future. Lin Cece lowered her head. Guzé, I didn't say those words out of anger. He was a little infuriated. She smiled. Because you took out such a big diamond ring. You're very sincere. I don't think I'll be able to find a man richer than you in the future. So after weighing the pros and cons, I reluctantly agreed. He glared at her, dissatisfied and angry. Lin Cece chuckled and said softly, Mr. Gu, I'm willing. Do you feel better now? He was still looking at her, silent, as though he were still angry. She stretched out a slender white finger and gently poked his heart. So stingy. If you don't like it, we won't get married. I don't want you to look so bitter when we get married. Who said I'm forcing it? He pulled her over and pressed her into his arms. His voice was low and hoarse. Lin Cece, have you thought it through? She nodded blankly. I've thought it through. What about you? Let me tell you, I won't sign any prenuptial agreement. What's yours is mine. You have to share everything with me. Guzé's hand was on her waist. His voice was hoarse and hoarse. I couldn't ask for more. Book from Chapter 36, 83. Lin Cece, let's get married, okay? 5 Guzé chuckled. Let's share my body too, okay? Lin Cece was a bit sentimental, but she couldn't stand him anymore. She glared at him. Guzé, can you be more serious? I'm not serious, Mrs. Gu. He picked her up and pressed her down on the bed again. Lin Cece, this is the second time you've been Mrs. Gu. She raised her head and looked at him coquettishly. She reached out and gently pulled his tie. So, his fingers gently caressed her red lips, and his voice was low and husky. So, can I call you second madam from now on? She was furious. Guzé, you're the one who's a fool. Your whole family is a fool. But she also scolded herself. After scolding her, He looked at her with sparkling eyes. Lin Cece could not take it anymore. She turned her face to the side and said in a hoarse voice, "Will your parents agree to our marriage?" She pressed her face against his chest. "Guze, I'm scared. After so many years, I'm still scared. I'm scared that we won't be accepted. I'm scared that I won't be able to have children anymore." He knew how scared she was, so he gave her all these years until he couldn't take it anymore. He pressed her head gently and kissed her. "I'm scared that I won't be able to have children no matter how old I get." He paused for a moment before saying, "Cece, if we can't get pregnant, we won't adopt, okay? I want to give the rest of my life to you." With that, he kissed her lips and said, "Do you know that I haven't had enough to eat all these years? I'm scared that you'll be too tired. I'm scared that you'll find me annoying and demanding. I'm scared that you'll be in a bad mood, so I don't even dare to change. Mrs. Gu, I want to make it up to you tonight." He said it so confidently. Lin Cece bit her lips. "Guze, we haven't registered our marriage yet. Then let's stamp it first. Make it deeper." "Huh?" he shamelessly said as he covered her body with green and purple bruises. If he was a little more rough, it would be enough to cause a family of violence. In the middle of the night, after taking a bath, Lin Cece looked at her neck in the mirror and punched the man who was laughing beside her. "Are you a vampire?" Guze was shaving his beard with a towel wrapped around his waist. He seemed to be in a good mood. He glanced at Lin Cece in the mirror and said slowly, "You were the one who sucked my—" The latter two words were covered by her small hand. She glared at him, forbidding him to continue. Guze pulled down her hand and kissed it. "I'm shaving. Stop it." Lin Cece continued to look at her neck. Guze said while shaving, "Cece, go cook a bowl of noodles for me. I haven't had dinner yet. I'm starving." Lin Cece glared at him. He put down the razor. "Having a good body is a necessary condition to satisfy Madam. Feeding me is also Madam's obligation. Don't you think so, Mrs. Gu?" Lin Cece tightened her bathrobe and snorted. "I'm also very tired now." Guze kissed her. "I'll give you a massage later." "Forget it." She rolled her eyes at him and went to cook for him. After a few steps, she muttered, "I'd rather call you second madam. I don't have to do anything." Guze laughed. "Look at how much effort I've put into making you feel so comfortable tonight. You just want to cook a bowl of noodles and die. Lin Cece, you heartless little thing." End of this chapter. Chapter 3684. Lin Cece, can we get married? 6-inch, I'm in my early 30s, Mr. Gu. She waved at him. "Let me remind you, you're going to be 40 soon, Mr. Gu." He picked up the razor again and looked at Lin Cece. "Yeah, you're still such a fierce man at 40, Lin Cece. It's not easy for a woman over 30 to find a man." Lin Cece took off her slippers and threw them at him. "Damn it." Guze smiled, picked up the slippers, and walked over to help her put them on. "You still haven't extinguished such a big fire after a month? I'll feed you some after you're done." She blushed and glared at him. Guze smiled. "Good girl, go downstairs." He went back to shave. Well, a man in his 40s also had to pay attention to his appearance. He had to make his wife feel proud all the time. It was hard to be a man these days. Not only did he have to be able to make money, but he also had to be handsome and have all kinds of skills to serve his wife well. But it wasn't bad this way. Lin Cece went downstairs for him in the kitchen. She only had a white bathrobe on, and her long hair was tied into a ponytail. She was naturally slender, so she looked like she was in her early 20s from the back. After Guze walked out, he looked at her and thought about the days when she waited for him in Sea City. He was a jerk back then, but he would make it up to her in the future and spend a lot of time with her. His heart softened, and he walked over to hug her waist from behind. "Cece, is the noodles ready?" "They're almost ready. Sit down and wait." She felt a little uncomfortable being hugged by him. Guze chuckled. He didn't let go of her. Instead, he hugged her tighter. "I missed you." His thin lips were still against her ear. "It's been so long. Don't you miss me, huh?" "No," she said stubbornly. Then she pulled the hand on her waist. "You're so clingy at your age. Guze, aren't you ashamed?" He chuckled and rested his face on her shoulder shamelessly, watching her put the mask back on. Lin Cece couldn't do anything to him. The two of them went to the dining table like conjoined twins. Guze finally ate his noodles in peace and looked up at her. "You're not eating?" she said. "I drank a bit, so I don't have an appetite." Actually, if it wasn't for the alcohol, she wouldn't have been so promiscuous with him. Guze looked at her and said calmly, "Don't drink in the future." "Why?" "Family rules." "Second, madam." Guze drank the last mouthful of noodle soup with satisfaction and looked at her. "Is there more?" Lin Cece was so angry that she wanted to smash the bowl on his head. "No more." "Really?" He smiled and took the bowl to the kitchen. He poured a small portion and ate it in front of her. He wiped his mouth and said, "Second, madam, it tastes good." Lin Cece glared at him. "If you call me that again, I'll give the ring back to you." Guze said, "That's good. I'm comfortable tonight anyway. Give me the ring and I'll find another woman." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand to take it. Lin Cece was furious. "Guze, you bastard." He grabbed her hand and kissed it. Then he said in a hoarse voice, "Lin Cece, I'll take you somewhere." She was a little confused. It was already late at night. Guze carried her back to the bedroom, helped her put on her coat, changed his clothes, and went out with the car key. End of this chapter. Chapter 3685. Lin Cece, can we get married? 7 after driving for about half an hour, Guze drove into a villa area. It was a very luxurious and high-end villa. As he drove, he explained, "It's developed by my company. I've reserved a piece of land for myself and built a villa there." Lin Cece looked at him. "For me, that's where we'll live after we get married." He smiled and held her hand. In the car, there was music that they both liked. After so many years, they knew each other's preferences very well. In the music, Lin Cece felt a little at ease. She wanted to sleep, but she held on. The car slowly came to a stop at the entrance of a manor. The car did not enter right away. Guze opened the car door and got out, holding her hand as they stood in front of the black door. Lin Cece looked up. The entire manor was about the size of a small district. It looked spectacular, and there was even a Ferris wheel inside. Colorful neon lights flashed around it as it rotated gently in the dark night. Guze looked at Lin Cece and said softly, "If we had a child in the past, she would be the princess here. If not, then Mrs. Gu will have it easy on you. You'll be my princess." As he said that, he pulled her in. They passed through the musical fountain, the merry-go-round, all the way to the gigantic and beautiful Ferris wheel. He knelt down on one knee, a rose in his hand. "Lin Cece, I've waited for a long time. I've confirmed that you're the one who will sleep with me for the rest of my life and feed me from below." Lin Cece looked at him. "Do you have to do this? You clearly want me in your heart, but you have to pretend that you don't care." She lowered her head and took the rose from his hand before hugging him gently. "Guze, I'm willing." He looked up. Under her gentle gaze, all the hurt that they had caused each other all those years disappeared. She smiled gently. "Actually, sometimes I wonder what you're waiting for. Turns out that you can't let it go even more than I can." Guze was still half kneeling, his face buried in her waist. He sighed. "If I had known, I would have proposed in advance to satisfy Mrs. Gu." Lin Cece smiled and reached out to hug his head. Behind her, someone set off fireworks. On such a dazzling night, it belonged to Lin Cece and Guze. Lin Cece nestled in Guze's arms and watched him set off the fireworks for her. She suddenly had the urge to call Bai Xueli. She wanted to tell her that she was getting married. Bai Xueli's phone was turned off. Lin Cece was a little disappointed. Then she sighed softly. Surely he is probably going to be miserable tonight. Thinking about how Guze had been starving for a month, the man from Bai Xueli's family had been starving for so long. It would be strange if he didn't tear Bai Xueli apart tonight. Lin shuddered at the thought of it. On the other side, Yumulin brought Bai Xueli to the GM hotel. Once they reached the hotel, she slept like a dead pig for 2 hours. When she woke up, she was still drunk and looked around in a daze. She was drunk. Where was this place? Who was she? Would a naked man come out and tell her that they had slept together? Shen Yin covered her face with her hands and groaned. Yumulin brought a cup of hangover soup from the kitchen and saw a certain woman rolling around on the bed with a pained expression. He sneered. She must be dreaming. She probably thought that she had a romantic encounter. Into this chapter. Chapter 3686. Yulin walked over and stood by the side, watching her quietly. The drunk Bai Shuili rolled to the side and stared at him with her dark eyes. Her face was charming because she was drunk. She hugged the pillow and looked at him. After a long while, she asked softly. Yulin, he sat by the side and reached out to caress her face. What else? She was still looking at him. After a long while, she said softly, You're definitely not a pervert. If you were, you would have pounced on me long ago. She gestured at her clothes. It's torn from here. She giggled and hugged the pillow. Don't be fooled by his serious appearance. He's actually a very ordinary man. He's very bad. She pointed at her chin. Look at how he pinched me here. My mom thought that he did it on purpose because I was serving Yulin. I guess that's what he thinks. You're right. That's what I think. Yulin was annoyed and amused at the same time. He reached out and pinched her chin gently. He didn't mean it when he accidentally pinched her. But if she thought that was what he meant, he wouldn't be a man if he didn't enjoy it. He moved closer to her, his face almost touching hers. Bai Shuili was so scared that she peed her pants. She stared at him and said in a trembling voice, Yulin, don't come over. She sobered up. Her eyes widened as she looked at the man who kept moving closer to her. She wanted to cry, but had no tears. Why don't you come over? Are you like this for other men to enjoy? MMH. He held her head and didn't rush to do anything to her. Instead, he caressed her red lips and murmured, Shueli, do you remember the past? He caressed her slowly and she said quickly, I don't remember. He smiled. If you don't remember, I'll help you remember. MH. With that said, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. The temperature in the hotel room was, of course, moderate. Even if their clothes fell to the ground one by one, they wouldn't feel cold. She probably knew his motive, so she was very resistant and kept resisting. When he wasn't paying attention, she jumped down and walked into the bathroom. Yulin smiled and followed her. He pulled the bathroom door shut with a bang. The woman who had escaped was curled up in a corner of the bathroom. She hugged her arms and bit her lip. Yulin, you're up to no good. You came here to possess me and sleep with me. What's wrong with sleeping with a woman you like? Is sleeping with someone else the right thing to do? He walked towards her. Bai Shuili screamed, Don't come over. She didn't want to do that. It was shameful to be looked at like that. In the end, he still walked in front of her and reached out to gently pinch her cheeks. In a low voice, he murmured, Don't you like it? If you don't like it, then next time. She was a little stunned, and then she was hugged by him. He pressed against her and kissed the wall, as though he had been holding it in for a long time. Bai Shuili used her remaining willpower to place it on his shoulder and murmured, Yulin, have you really never had anyone else? He was a little annoyed that she still had the heart to ask such a question at this time. He snorted, Yes, so it's very clean. There's no one else but you. As soon as she finished speaking, Bai Shuili licked her lower lip and swallowed her saliva. She said softly, Actually, it's not impossible. Chapter 3687. I've always belonged to you too. His eyes gazed deeply at her, and he kept looking at her. After a long time, he said hoarsely, Bai Shuili, are you really willing? He hadn't even started, but his mind was already crazily imagining it. His slender fingers caressed her face, caressing that velvety texture, and his dark eyes seemed to be on fire as he looked at her. She let him caress her and moved her face closer to his, like an obedient kitten. Yulin lowered his head and kissed her passionately. After a long time, he murmured, Bai Shuili, I suddenly can't bear to do this to you. His fingers were still on her lips, rubbing and kissing. It was as though he couldn't get enough. The shower in the bathroom had been turned on, and the warm water splashed on her body. It was hot, mixed with the smell of alcohol. Her clothes fell to the ground piece by piece. 10 minutes later, Bai Shuili's voice was a little muffled, and she screamed, Yulin, you said you can't bear to do this to me. She couldn't finish her sentence. Yulin enjoyed it to his heart's content. His fingers pressed on her scalp, and he sighed. I changed my mind. After that, she didn't have a chance to speak. She didn't know how to speak, and it hurt him a lot. Then there was another kind of mess. After the mess in the bathroom, he carried her to the soft bed in the bedroom. While she was in a good state, he whipped her for the rest of the night. He didn't release her until the sky was just beginning to brighten. Bai Shiuli was in a deep sleep. She was exhausted. She lay in his arms, motionless. Yim Yulin lowered his head and looked at the woman in his arms. He felt his life being filled. He stood at such a high place. He had always wanted her to see him, and she was finally back. He smiled and reached out to stroke her hair. He kissed it and said in a hoarse voice, "Bai Shiuli, I still treat you the same way. If you dare to run away from me again, I'll break your legs." Naturally, she couldn't hear him. His voice was deep. "Break your legs, and you'll be chained to the bed from now on. You're not allowed to go anywhere." After saying that, he hugged her again. His face was filled with grievance. "Bai Shiuli, I've liked you for so many years. Sometimes I feel like I've fed a dog." This dog was called Bai Shiuli. His heart was eaten by a dog. Hugging her, he slowly drifted off to sleep. When she woke up, it was already 4 in the afternoon. As soon as Bai Shiuli opened her eyes, she stared at the enlarged Jun Yin in front of her. Yim Yulin's voice was indifferent. "Why? Are you disappointed to see me? Did you think that you messed around with a little fresh meat after drinking?" Bai Shiuli glared at him, but her face was slightly red. She reached out and pulled the quilt to take a look. Then, she raised her fist and threw it at him. "Yim Yulin, you're too hateful." Her body was covered in hickeys. There wasn't a single spot that was unscathed. He was too despicable. Yim Yulin just let her hit him. She couldn't hurt him anyway. When she was done, he reached out and pulled her into his arms, letting her lie on top of him. Bai Shiuli was a mature woman. Naturally, she could feel his strangeness. Her watery eyes widened as she stared at him. "Yim Yulin, you are not human." After torturing her for the entire night, he still had the heart to do it. End of the chapter. Chapter 3688. "I have always belonged to you." Yim Yulin looked at her expression and smiled. He reached out to grab her little hand. "Bai Shiuli, I'm not 40 yet. Isn't that normal?" Her hand struggled, but he still stuck it to her. Then he whispered, "You're already in your early 30s, but you're still like a little girl. Don't you understand, men?" Bai Shiuli's face was about to burst into smoke. She bit her lip and glared at him. Yes, she had had a man before, but he was the only one. Although she hadn't compared herself, she knew that ordinary men wouldn't be so powerful. Did he take a jar of aphrodisiac? She stared at him, her eyes full of tears. Yim Yulin chuckled again and reached out to rub her hair. "What's wrong?" She was still staring at him. "Yim Yulin, can't you control yourself?" He looked at her in surprise. "If I could control myself, men wouldn't need women." She gave him a light slap on his face. Only Bai Shiuli would dare to slap the bureau chief so openly like this. She glared at him. "Yim Yulin, you're too despicable. Is a woman only good for warming the bed?" He looked at her and chuckled. "But Bai Shiuli, this seems to be your biggest role for me. Otherwise, what else? Tell me." He looked like he was accepting it humbly. Bai Shiuli was furious. She glared at him and said, "I can still have children." "Bai Anan?" His hand rested on her back, moving from top to bottom in a hair-raising manner, stroking down bit by bit. Finally, it landed on the place where she was often beaten and pressed down hard. She immediately cried out, "Yim Yulin, what are you doing?" He murmured, "I'm just reminding you that Anan is also half of my effort." She was angry and glared at him. "You only provided semen." As she said that, her eyes became a little red. He could see her sadness, so he reached out and gently stroked her face. His voice was hoarse. "Shiuli, it's been hard all these years, hasn't it?" She slapped his hand away and threw a tantrum. "No more." He smiled and looked at her little face. "You're angry that I only care about my own desires, aren't you? Do you think that I have less feelings for you than I do for you?" She made no sound. Any other woman would think the same way if he were to act like this. Yim Yulin smiled faintly and did not explain. He hugged her and whispered in her ear, "Shweli, I just miss you. It's been so many years, and our child has grown up. Don't you miss me at all? Don't you miss the nights we share when you sleep alone? She lowered her eyes and did not make a sound. He sighed softly and smiled faintly. He didn't say anything and just gently placed her in his arms. After hugging her for a while, he murmured, "I'll take you to wash." As he spoke, he carried her to the bathroom and did not take advantage of her at all. Just as he was about to carry her out of the bathtub, she reached out and hugged him. Yimulin. He lowered his head and looked at her. "What's wrong?" She bit her lips and said softly, "I don't want to be your ching all the time. Although Anan likes you, others will know her sooner or later. I didn't deliberately hide her existence. She went to my place, didn't she?" He reached out and gently pinched her soft face. Bai Shiuli was stunned for a moment. After a long time, she hesitated and said, "You? What do you mean?" End of this chapter. Chapter 3689. I have always belonged to you, he smiled and didn't answer her question directly. Instead, he murmured, "What do you think?" With that, he kissed her and carried her back. She was only wearing a bathrobe while he had changed his clothes neatly. "I'll order a customer service meal for you." He looked at his watch. "I have a meeting later." Bai Shiuli was stunned. "You're leaving soon?" He smiled bitterly. "I'm really busy." Bai Shiuli wanted to throw a tantrum. He had tormented her for so long and then left her in the hotel while he went to the meeting. But she wanted to throw a tantrum when she suddenly recalled what they had said before. She had asked him, "Yimulin, are you happy now that you're standing at such a high position?" He hadn't answered her, and now she wanted to ask him again. She grabbed his arm. He turned to look at her. Bai Shiuli said in a low voice, "Yimulin, are you happy? Now, standing at such a high position, any normal man would be happy, right?" He turned back, his gaze unfathomable. After a while, he smiled and pinched her face. "Wait for me to come back." But she didn't want to let him go. She still hugged him and asked softly, "Are you happy? This question is very important to me." Yimulin thought for a moment and carried her up, pressing her forehead against his. Then, he said softly, "Shueli, I'm very happy that you're back. As for work, it's definitely not as interesting as when I was a lawyer, but we have to find a balance. When you want to get what you want the most, you have to put down other hobbies and even sacrifice them, right?" Her throat seemed to be blocked, and she couldn't say anything for a long time. After a long time, she murmured, "I'm the most important one, right?" He sighed. "Silly girl. Of course." But he didn't say it out loud. Our chief, he was also a very proud man. He waited for her to speak first. He kissed her, his voice trembling with unprecedented sexiness. "I really have to go, otherwise everyone in the meeting room will laugh at me and say that I'm stuck in a woman's nest and can't get out." She punched him and then felt her heart ache. "You haven't eaten anything for a day. Secretary, Lee will prepare a nutritious meal for me. It's very refreshing," he said in a low, hoarse voice. Bai Shiuli originally hated him very much, but at this moment, she was a little reluctant to let him leave. Her fingers gently stroked his buttons, and she murmured, "Yimulin, it must be terrible. Make it up to me tonight." He kissed her and thought of something. "Wait for me here. I'll finish at 8. Come here, and I'll take you out for a barbecue. Do you want it? Don't get diarrhea again." She laughed at him before her expression turned serious. "Can we go out to eat together? Aren't you afraid of being seen?" He ruffled her hair, smiled, and left without saying a word. After he left, Bai Shiuli thought about it and still felt sorry for him. He seemed to be doing everything for her, and she had been throwing a tantrum. Although he could be very hateful at times, like last night, she did enjoy it. It tasted pretty good. She gently licked her lips, her face a little red. On the other side, Yimulin went directly to the general office for a meeting. There were subordinates and people of the same rank in the meeting. After he sat down, Secretary Lee reminded him in a low voice, "Chief Yi, your neck has been scratched." End of this chapter. Chapter 3690. Sigh. He came in the afternoon with such a body full of scars. There was no one else. Which leader didn't keep a low profile, unlike their night chief, who was afraid that others didn't know he had a woman? His real wife was in the hospital. It must be a woman outside to be able to fight like this. Secretary Lee's gaze was complicated, and so were the others in the meeting. Those pairs of eyes didn't dare to fall on Night Chief's face. They felt warm just by looking at him. Yumulin didn't say anything and just calmly adjusted the collar of his shirt. That action made the hearts of all the women in the room flutter. How charming. Yumulin continued to host the meeting until 7 p.m. In his office, Secretary Lee helped him tidy up the documents. Yumulin sat in front of the desk, opened the drawer, and took out 2 pills. Secretary Lee looked back and frowned, walking over. "Chief, is your stomach uncomfortable again?" That wasn't right. The chief didn't show any discomfort in the meeting room. But Secretary Lee remembered that the chief didn't want others to know. After all, there were so many scratches on his neck, and now his stomach was acting up. He would be laughed at. Secretary Lee thought of this and found it both funny and angry. She had followed Yumulin for more than 10 years and felt that he was getting older and older, but he seemed to be getting more and more childish. She went forward and said with concern, "Then you can rest here for a while. I'll stay here and order a light food. You can leave when you feel better." She was really worried. Yumulin looked up at her, then said lightly, "Okay." He went to the lounge inside to rest. Secretary Lee had married and had children these years, so she loved people, children, and even old people like Night Chief. After Yumulin lay down, Secretary Lee gently measured his body temperature. His movements were very gentle, so he would definitely not feel uncomfortable. Then, he took a small thermos bag, filled it with hot water, and placed it in Yumulin's hand to warm his stomach. Yumulin put one hand on his forehead and said softly, "Only you can take care of him so well. If it was Shweli, she probably wouldn't do this, or she would be flustered." Secretary Lee bent over and helped him tuck in the quilt, smiling. Although the chief is disgusted with her, he can't stop smiling when he mentions her. "I'm not laughing. I just dislike her." He frowned again as he spoke, but soon relaxed again. Secretary Lee knew that he wasn't feeling well, so she said softly, "Then I'll go outside to clean up. If it's still not good in half an hour, I'll go to the hospital. You have to listen to me on this." His illness had dragged on for a few years. He had worked like a madman and did not take care of himself. Secretary Lee tiptoed out and closed the door behind her. She quietly tidied up the documents outside. After half an hour of tidying up, she knocked on the door and went in. Yumulin did not look well. His face was pale. Secretary Lee went over to touch her forehead and murmured, "I'll get someone to send you to the hospital." Yumulin was awake. His entire body was icy cold, but it would heat up in a moment. It was very, very hot. Closing his eyes, he mumbled, "My phone is in my pocket. Call Shirley for me. Tell her to go home first and tell her that I have to work overtime." After he finished speaking, he frowned again and closed his eyes. Secretary Lee knew that he was very uncomfortable, so she took the phone and asked someone to send him to the hospital first. Chapter 3691. The black limousine silently sent him to the hospital. Sometimes it was a sad position to sit in this position. He didn't dare to let others know that he was sick for fear that others would say that he was too weak and should retire. Secretary Lee sat in the car, looking calm. She had experienced such things many times in the past few years, and she handled it perfectly every time. She was so skilled that she even had a special passage in the hospital. When they arrived at the hospital, the doctor quickly pushed him into the examination room. The result was good. It was just acute inflammation, and he would be fine after 2 days of infusion. But the doctor said seriously, "The general is too careless and always forgets to eat during work. His stomach is not good, and he needs to take care of it. I told him many times, but he didn't listen. I thought he would restrain himself in the past 6 months, but it happened again. Shaoli, you have to persuade him. It's not good if it goes on like this." The doctor said something serious again. "Nocturnal Chieftain is less than 40 years old. How can you be his secretary?" Secretary Lee felt sorry for him and felt wronged. After a while, she said, "I will think of a way." Regarding this, he could probably only start from by Shweli. The bureau chief would probably listen to her. Thinking of this, she remembered that she hadn't made a call, so she dialed it. Soon, Bai Shuli picked up. Yulin, you said you would be back at the hotel at 8, but it's almost 9. I'm leaving now. Secretary Li said, Shueli, it's me. Bai Shuli was stunned. Secretary Li? No, no. Why is his phone in your hands? Secretary Li smiled bitterly. The general's stomach is acting up again. He asked me to call you, but he didn't let me tell you. But I thought about it and decided to tell you. He is now on a 4 drip in the hospital. Bai Shuli was stunned for a while, then said blankly, Where is he? Is it serious? It's all right, did I scare you? Secretary Li hurriedly comforted him softly. What a joke. This was the bureau chief's precious baby. Bai Shuli was silent for a while. Secretary Li probed carefully. Aren't you coming over? Bai Shuli bit her lip. He will think I am clumsy. Secretary Li was about to burst out laughing, but he tried his best to hold it in. No, the bureau chief was praising you just now. This probably gave Bai Shuli some confidence. She immediately got ready and asked the taxi driver to drive the car to the hospital. She also called her parents and told them that she would be out for a few more days. Mr. and Mrs. Ba were naturally willing. When Bai Shuli arrived at the hospital, Yulin was already connected to an intravenous drip. He was lying quietly, but he was still worried about Bai Shuli. He asked Secretary Li, Have you called? While peeling an apple, Secretary Li said softly, I did, but Shirley insisted on asking. I accidentally said it out loud. Director, I'm sorry. You'll forgive me, right? Yulin glared at her. After a long time, he scolded softly, but getting more and more daring. Secretary Li put the apple away. He looked at it. I can't eat. Why are you peeling this thing? It's for Shirley. She's probably hungry. Secretary Li smiled mischievously. At this moment, the door opened. Yulin thought it was Bai Shuli, so he said naturally, Didn't I ask you to wait for me in the hotel? However, it was when Yuan who came in. Because they were in the same hospital, he saw Secretary Li and came over. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.